Hi, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of Hunting Matters, brought to you by the Houston Safari Club Foundation. Our guest this week is Joe Richards. We're going to talk a lot about Joe's background, but he's graduated from Texas A&M University with a bachelor's degree in Wildlife and Fisheries Sciences and a double major in entomology. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's bugs, right, Joe?
Oh yeah.
And in 2025, he graduated with a master's degree in wildlife, aquatic, and wildland science and management from Texas Tech University. He's also a seasoned photographer and writer, and his current role is as an outreach specialist for Playa Lakes Joint Venture. We're going to talk about all that stuff today. So, Joe, thank you so much for your time and for joining us today.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me. It's an honor.
Let's start. I guess the best place to start or to begin with is that back at the beginning. Where did your passion for wildlife and the outdoors begin? Was there a particular reason or experience kind of set you down this path?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll just start at the very beginning.
Sure.
Kind of in my youth, when growing up, I grew up in the Texas Hill Country, and so my family spends a lot of time in the outdoors, and then that's kind of what led to my future career path and pursuing a career in the natural resources realm. But I grew up hunting, fishing, camping, going, and then one of the big ones is wildlife photography, which I think really kind of helped set me apart. And getting to go out into like some big private ranches and getting to see some of the species like white-tailed deer, photographing pretty much anything, everything under the sun, and that's kind of how I love to spend my time in the outdoors and kind of connecting it with art and photography. But yeah, that's sort of how I got started. And then one of the biggest kind of things that kind of happened to me was I decided I wanted to look more into natural resources and take it more seriously, but I didn't really know what my career options were. Kind of thought, I always loved animals. So looking at some of the options, I was really intrigued by A&M's program in
Mm-hmm.
Wildlife and Fisheries Sciences. But before even that, I went and attended as a cadet the Texas Brigade's youth camp, the South Texas Bob White Brigade. And that really instilled in me sort of the confidence and just the passion and the drive to really look at that. And shortly after that, I was accepted at A&M, and then that's when started to take classes and courses kind of designed towards a wildlife biologist degree or wildlife biologist career. Met a lot of people and a lot of friends and connections that I made in college and also at that brigades camp that still maintained today. And they've been a huge support along with my family. And then got really involved in the Texas chapter of the Wildlife Society at Texas A&M. So that's where I got a lot of hands-on experience, volunteering with Texas Parks and Wildlife and going on deer captures and going bird banding labs. And then the courses themselves offered a lot of experiences. And then I was told, to be really set apart in this field, you have to go do some seasonal internships. And so that's what I did. First one that I did was in the summer of 2018. I went to the Rolling Plains Bob White, or I'm sorry, the um, Rolling Plains Research Foundation Quail Ranch near Roby. I
Mm-hmm.
was a seasonal intern or a summer intern or tech. And so I spent the summer tracking quail with radio telemetry, doing small mammal trapping, doing raptor surveys, invertebrate sampling, which I've done a lot of. And, if we get to talk about my master's, that's basically what I did mostly of. A lot of entomology and identifying insects. But also on that ranch, I did a lot of photography, and that was one of the big things that one of the biggest reasons that I was hired for that position was because the ranch really wanted photographs of the landscape, of the wildlife, of the quail. And so that was one of the things that I was able to give back during that internship. And it's been really cool to see how they've gotten to use those photos and outreach and education ever since. Um, Finished my degree or continued my degree at A&M and did some other seasonal internships. One in Colorado with elk calves, and then I went after graduating in from A&M, I went and did a seasonal internship in Oklahoma with wild turkey research in southeast Oklahoma, tracking wild turkeys and doing vegetation sampling and surveys, documenting, for a research project looking at the population in southeast Oklahoma. And then, yeah, there's a lot more. A lot more I could say, going into my master's and then at Texas Tech University, and then kind of starting my position here in the Texas Panhandle, working for Playa Lakes Joint Venture. But I've covered a lot.
Yeah. Okay. That's today's shows, folks. No, just kidding. No, man, that's a very impressive path.
The Houston Safari Club Foundation's Worldwide Hunting Expo and Convention is back, January 15th through the 17th at the Woodlands Waterway Marriott. Explore worldwide hunting and fishing outfitters, gear, auctions, raffles, and banquets. $20 at the door, kids under 15, military and first responders free with ID. Learn more at WeHuntWeGive.org. Sponsored by Boyd's Hardwood Gunstocks, Capital Farm Credit, Cargill, Record Rack, Copandero, DEA Ranch, Genus Logistics, Gunworks, Revic, Way Engineering, Wildlife Partners.
Capital Farm Credit understands that there's something about the outdoors that pulls you in. Could be the fresh air, the colors, the smells, the animals, the freedom. It's all just a part of who you are. And with our recreational land loans, you can purchase land for whatever outdoor pursuit you please. That way, the outdoors won't just be in your soul, it'll also be in your name. To learn more, visit capitalfarmcredit.com. Together, we're better.
Let's backstep a little bit here. So the double major in entomology from A&M. Why entomology?
Well, so when I started at A&M, I knew I wanted to. I had a lot of dual credit hours from high school, so I was going to finish my degree pretty early, like a year in advance. So I wanted to do something that would also kind of set me apart in the job search and in my career. And I was always very passionate about insects and vertebrates. And that was one of the biggest things that A&M offered is they have a very great and renowned entomology department. And I got to know several people, and I talked to my academic advisor at the time and said, "Hey, I'm looking for sort of like a double major or minor in the entomology subject." And he was like, "Great, all you got to do is take 30 something more hours and you could get your double major." And then I was like, "Sweet, that's exactly what I wanted to do." And so I added about 30 something hours of entomology courses, which I really loved. And then I started getting to know some of the people in the department, and then I kind of picked up. They have they have all kinds of interesting laboratories and doing so much research, from mosquitoes to fire ants to some of the smallest wasps that you don't even know, nobody's ever even heard of. But I got in with one of the labs and I started working with microscope cameras and taking pictures of some of their invertebrate specimens that they have, because the entomology building at A&M, it's like almost half of it's just collections. And so they've got drawers and entire floors of just invertebrate specimens. So millions of specimens. And one of the people I was talking to, they wanted to photograph or digitally catalog as many specimens as they could. So that was something that I was really interested in, kind of bridging the entomology and the photography together. So they hired me as a student worker, and I got to work in that lab and doing something that I never had really imagined doing, taking photos of these, smaller than the period on the end of a sentence invertebrates, and blowing them up into these huge images so that they could catalog all the specimens. But
that's quite an undertaking.
It's quite an undertaking. It really prepared me, though, for my master's work too, working with invertebrates, because I was kind of used to, the lab work, taking pictures and sort of working with the microscopes, identifying specific features to get them down to genus or species. So that was all very helpful at that time. And really in the photography, I photograph kind of everything. So my dad is a photographer. He's really specializes in white-tailed deer and some of the big game species. I love the deer. I also photograph as many, macro invertebrates as I can. And so I bought like a macro lens, and that's just, I spend as much time photographing every birds and other species as I do the invertebrates, because you can really go anywhere. That's why I love them so much, is I love the details in their structures, and looking at their exoskeletons, the textures and the colors, and then getting to show people all that, because it's stuff that a lot of us really take for granted or never really even get to see. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I can see how, especially if you're studying bird populations and things like that, I can see how that can come in extremely handy. I'm always intrigued by bugs, not, now we have iPhones, so I take a picture of it and hopefully I can try to get an identification on something I've never seen before. Um,
hmm
but while I have you, as a captive audience, let's talk about the thing that's burning on everybody's minds these days, the screwworm issue. So,
yeah.
as an entomologist, I want to get your take on what's happening, what's going to happen, uh, dispel some myths, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm the best person to talk to about, the current, what is happening currently,
Yeah.
but I've gotten to see, I was actually at an entomology conference. So the Entomological Society of America, or ESA, I was presenting my master's research at their conference in Phoenix a few years ago. And then I went into one of their symposium was about screwworm.
Mm.
And I had always heard about New World screwworm mainly because of deer, and talking about how the eradication of screwworm, and how that has really benefited deer populations and all big game populations. But to tell you about the symposium, they were saying like they were already tracking the movement of screwworm through Central America long before it was ever in the news, and
Yeah.
the entomologists knew this. And it was really interesting to get to hear those perspectives, because because of some of the land use change in Central America, the movement of cattle and other domesticated livestock. And then during the COVID years, things had changed. Things had kind of probably gotten a little bit lax. And so that all of that combined kind of contributed to the movement of New World screwworm.
Mm.
And then it was interesting, kind of fast forwarding to now, seeing the development or the movement of it into Central Texas, and now hearing about Texas Parks and Wildlife's response. The teams that they're set up, like the checkpoints, looking for the screwworm. So it was bound to happen, but it is really amazing to see the response, even from the federal agencies, the USDA, the Texas Health Commission, all of that, Animal Health Commission, just getting to see like the new development that they have of some of the um, SIT program. So trying to combat or trying to mitigate as much of that as we can while we can. But yeah, I think it's really interesting, and to hear those perspectives too of the people that grew up with it. Some of the older landowners and cattle producers, everyone who's kind of in the agricultural realm, is going to be aware of this. And
Yeah.
so it's going to take a lot of collaboration and a lot of effort from a lot of agencies, and landowners in particular.
The other thing I hear from my friends who are ranch managers and landowners is that they remember the '60s and the '70s and the outbreak then and how bad it was, and they're fearful of course, but I think hopefully we've made advancements in combating screwworm, but it's inevitable. I mean, once it starts to spread, it starts to spread. So hopefully they'll get it under control fairly quickly, and then you hear of course talk about release of sterile flies and things like that. So Hunting Matters is presented by Copandero Indoor Archery Pistol and Rifle Range, your premier indoor archery pistol and rifle shooting destination. Located in Oak Ridge North, right next to the Woodlands, Copandero offers two 25-yard pistol ranges, a 100-yard rifle range, and a 25-yard archery range. Whether you're honing your skills or just starting, Copandero has everything you need, including rentals, classes, a retail store, an in-house cafe, and a VIP lounge. Join Copandero today for an unmatched shooting experience. To learn more, go to copandero.com. Are you looking for an investment that goes beyond the ordinary? Wildlife Partners is the nation's leader in breeding and consulting for the exotic wildlife industry. When you invest in wildlife, you're not just acquiring a 100% tax-deductible asset, you're playing a vital role in the conservation of endangered species. Do you own land? You can turn your ranch into a profitable wildlife-driven business. And even if you don't own land, that's no problem. Wildlife Partners offers unique opportunities for non-landowners to invest in conservation while enjoying significant tax benefits and potential cash flow.
Yeah.
Are there any new approaches to treating or preventing for screwworm that you're aware of?
Not that are as effective as the SIT program, and at least in trying to combat it at a very large spatial scale. Um, I have heard, flies, dipterans, as we, entomologists call them,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of run the world.
Yeah.
They're extremely hard to deal with and to manage. You got several strains or several genetic, mutations of the same species that become resistant to, for example, like certain pesticides, and then you've got to combat them with new different forms. But the SIT program has been, is what they're starting with and trying to build up again, because a lot of the SIT centers that are like in the valley, they're currently producing Mexican fruit flies,
Mm.
because that's a big agricultural pest in the valley, and it's a big concern. So all those facilities, they're pumping out Mexican fruit flies, and now we've got new facilities coming up, like at Moore Air Force Base, that are going to be for the New World screwworm. But it's amazing to see how the dipterans, I mean, everything, mosquitoes are included in that, and just, how they change even all the behavior in wildlife, the flies in Alaska, the biting flies in South America, the tsetse flies in Africa. I mean, every place has got their own version of it, so it's pretty amazing to see it. New World screwworm. It's interesting how it's kind of come about, and there was even another more recent case of it in the key deer in the Florida Keys, and that was kind of a unique situation. But we were able to combat that, so I think we'll be able to work with this and in Texas and some of the southwestern states.
From an entomology standpoint, is there a grouping or a class or species of for lack of a better word, since I'm not going to use the big scientific terminology all the time, of bugs that you like to study and that you're more attracted to, or is it all of them?
Flies are really hard to identify, so I've never been extremely, affectionate toward the flies.
Yeah.
But when I was doing my master's degree at Texas Tech, I was looking at terrestrial invertebrate communities affiliated with wild turkey habitat, and so I was doing sweep net sampling, pitfalls, and some sticky traps,
Mm.
and with all of that different sampling methodology, we got a lot of invertebrates. I think we ended up with over 166,000 specimens.
Wow.
That we counted. And so, yeah, look, shoveling through all those invertebrates, you got to see some really cool ones. I really love ants. I think the ants were a cool group that offered a lot of diversity, offered a lot of unique things that I had never even seen before. And I've lived in Texas pretty much my whole life. So things like big-headed ants that the soldier ant casts, they have these just massive heads that they use to block the tunnels in the ground or in trees. And so as a defense mechanism.
Huh.
So that was really cool. But ants, and then several of the beetles. I really love like ground beetles. We call them carabidae.
Mm.
They, a lot of them are predaceous. A lot of them eat on other invertebrates, but several of them are really good indicators of the health of an ecosystem or a habitat. So, and they have really high diversity as well. So getting to see a lot of that diversity in the area that we were sampling, which was Central Texas and the Hill Country, it was cool to see that, and the differences between like certain habitat types or vegetation types. So some along the river versus some of the more upland areas, a lot of the different community differences. So
it's always been fascinating to me, and I've learned over the years, not at an expert level, of course, and not from an educational background, but how you can watch things like ants and sagebrush and animals and patterns and behaviors of invertebrates or plants or mammals to predict weather. Um, a lot of times, that's always fascinated me.
Hmm. Into
Um,
a very like specific example, like some of the cricket species that we have, even in Texas,
uh,
there's different math or models, kind of formulas that you can count the number of clicks and then that a cricket makes, and then you can affiliate that with temperature. So it's interesting because like there was research that has been done on like this kind of level of like how do the crickets respond to such these environmental stimuli. So
that's crazy. So kind of like the same principle as when you see lightning, you count till you hear the thunder, determine how far away it is, type deal.
yeah.
Kind of like that math. That's crazy. I never knew that. Let's talk. Let's talk. So before you took your current position, you worked through, like you said earlier, a variety of seasonal different internships in several different states: quail in Texas, elk in Colorado, turkeys in Oklahoma. How valuable was that diversity of experience in at preparing you for your career? And what advice would you give other students who are, in this position that you were in years ago, as far as pursuing the type of career that you pursued?
For sure. I mean, that the experience was invaluable in getting to especially branch out and not just stay in Texas, but also go work in other states, kind of see different environments, see different ecosystems, getting to work with a diversity of people from different states because, you know, I feel like a lot of people kind of coming like in this field, like they want to work with one or two different species. It's like, hey, I'm passionate about black bears,
Mm-hmm.
and I only want to work with black bears in Texas. But the reality of that is, it's like that job may not become available for 20, 30 years
Right.
because that position's been filled. So for anybody who's entering this field or is in college or even before then and they're kind of thinking about it, I recommend looking for these opportunities now, and then trying to get experience and get build your resume, make connections, network with different professionals at conferences or different events, just because those can lead to some really great opportunities like internships and seasonal positions. And then it's not a long-term commitment. It's a couple months to maybe a year. You get to work with a variety of species, which is one of the coolest things. And one of the reasons that I really valued my first internship with on the quail ranch, it was because I got to work with a variety of different techniques. Learned for the first time, how to do small mammal sampling, trapping, and with Sherman traps, and then the next day we're doing invertebrate sampling, and then the next day you're doing a raptor survey. So I mean, there's all kinds of I got exposed to a lot of different opportunities and different like research and wildlife surveying techniques. And so trying to get as much of that experience while you can in college, that will really set you up for for being competitive when it comes to finding a job or a more permanent position. And then just kind of as I've kind of said it before, working in different states, it just you work with lots of different people, and it's really cool to see just examples of how wildlife management is happening in other states, because it's a lot different in Texas than it is in Colorado versus a Louisiana or in Alaska. So and getting to do those opportunities and kind of in that seasonal term while I'm young and can move around or could move around at the time, that was the time to do it.
Yeah.
So,
I laugh because I grew up in Louisiana. Everything's different in Louisiana. the,
yeah,
the way
my
they,
dad was born in Louisiana too, and
yeah,
and getting to go over there, but I've never worked with wildlife in Louisiana, not like in a permanent position. So,
right. Yeah. I used to live, I grew up on, it was basically an island in northeast Louisiana. And uh, uh, Louisiana Fish and Wildlife, Wildlife and Fisheries, were they had a station right there. I mean, you could literally walk. We'd go over there all the time and harass them. They're like, kids don't have anything better to do. We'd go over there and hang out at the station and say, we saw 2 new alligators out in the bayou this week. Y'all need to go check them out. Or somebody's dog is missing.
Uh,
There was always a lot of interaction there. So it was great as a kid growing up. It was great because they'd run up on you. You'd be in your little 12-foot John boat out duck hunting or fishing or something like that. No, that kid, he's okay. I don't even need to stop and check him. So that was kind of nice.
Hunting Matters is presented by DEA Ranch. Are you looking for the ultimate South Texas hunting experience? Then look no further than DEA Ranch. DEA Ranch offers some of the best whitetail and exotic game hunts in South Texas year-round. Whether you're looking to fill your freezer or put that next hunting memory on the wall, their professional guides are focused on ensuring each client has a memorable and exciting hunting experience. DEA Ranch offers guided hunts, professional staff, chef-prepared meals, trophy preparation, and more. To learn more, go to dearanch.com. That's dearanch.com.
When you're deep in the field, far from roads, hospitals, or immediate help, preparation matters. Global Rescue provides medical and security advisory and evacuation services to hunters worldwide. From field rescue at the point of injury or illness to medical evacuation and real-time support, Global Rescue teams are ready 24/7, 365, with operations centers staffed by experienced professionals ready to respond. Whether close to home or far from it, having the right support matters. Plan your next hunt with confidence. Learn more at globalrescue.com/hunting matters. Let's talk quail. Quail is a subject obviously you've had exposure to and have dealt with. Quail people are very, very passionate, I found. I really didn't have a lot of dealings with quail until I moved to Texas several years ago. It's not something you talk about on a daily basis in Louisiana, but quail populations have faced significant challenges over the year of drought. Drought. Do we have a drought one year? Do we not have a drought another year? Quail hunters and people who love quail are very, very, and I'm sure you can confirm this, are very, very passionate about quail. During your time working with, when you were working with quail research, what did you learn about the biggest challenges that these birds face, and are there things that landowners and hunters that they can do that can truly make a difference?
Sure. Well, I think most of my education throughout the quail, it came from, at my time at Texas Brigades, at South Texas Bobwhite, and then on that internship with at the Rolling Plains Quail Research Ranch. Like you said, the quail are declining in a lot of areas, specifically in the southeast, and so we're biggest thing that I can tell, or I would tell a landowner, is you got to have habitat. And so habitat species specific, and there's a lot of different management practices that you can implement to achieve your management goals, or if you're interested in quail, doing prescribed burning, doing mechanical brush sculpting, or kind of management for setting back vegetation and control, or managing vegetation to that early successional level that quail enjoy. So just providing habitat, and then I would I recommend working with your local biologists, with the state, or somebody like a Quail Forever, or Pheasants Forever. They have biologists that are extremely attuned to your local area and what your local populations are doing. Just because quail, they can be pretty difficult. When I was working at the quail ranch, I had my 30, 40 birds that were radio collared that I was tracking every day or every other day for half of them. So we get 3 GPS points on each bird in doing that. And so of course you're going to have some quail that bite the dust and get eaten, or something happens to them. And I had, probably by the end of my internship, over half of those birds had bit the dust and died in some way from a predator or from just the elements. I even had, probably my second or third week that I was out there, there was a hailstorm, and that wiped out 7 birds in my group. So there's a lot of things going against quail. And then there's the conversations that people are having about the about parasites, predator control, and there's all kinds of things going against the quail. But I would say that the primary thing that landowner needs to have first is good habitat,
Yeah.
suitable habitat for that bird.
You mentioned Texas Brigades a couple times. We had, I think, 2 weeks ago, we had another person who had been in Texas Brigades. For people who have never heard of that program or not familiar with it, can you talk a little bit about it and what effect it had on your career and your future?
For sure. I think the person you're talking about is Jake Hill.
Yeah.
Jake and I met at that Bob White
Oh,
Brigade that I keep referring to. That's the first time I met Jake, and we were in the same covey, and we've continued to stay friends ever since. He was my roommate when I started up here at my master's, and now he's in Amarillo and I'm in Lubbock, so we're still pretty close and we chat often.
yeah.
Uh, I think for people who are unaware of what Texas Brigades is, they are a nonprofit organization, and they're dedicated to um, student leadership and youth. It's like a youth leadership camp
Mm.
that they host, and they host several different ones throughout the state. And they all kind of have their own main topic. And so there's Bob White Brigade, there's Whitetail or Buckskin Brigade, there's Waterfowl, there's coastal, bass, ranch. So there's a variety of topics that any youth that's interested, there is a camp for you. Um, but you get to spend about a week with biologists and with professionals in the wildlife field and the agriculture and ranching from several different agencies and organizations. So it's a really great opportunity for youth to actually get to meet some of these people at a very young age, and then get to network, and then also get to learn about all these different topics in a very in-depth, detailed way. And so it's a pretty rigorous camp. So it's like you're waking up at 5:30 in the morning, and then you're going in the field. You're doing vegetation sampling. You're listening to presentations about a variety of topics, everything that you can think about, and probably more so about the biology, about the status of the species, or different all sorts of different topics. But the other big thing is that they instill leadership skills. They're one of their biggest proponents is that they want the students or the kids to come away better public speakers, more informed about what is stewardship, what is land ethics, what does natural resources mean to them, so that when they leave that camp, then they may not all end up in careers as wildlife biologists. Some of them are going to be decision makers, some of them are going to be lawyers, some of them are going to be you name it,
Yeah.
or landowners, or ranchers themselves. So but they're going to come away with those leadership skills, and I think that's extremely valuable in letting people know, like, this is all this stewardship talk, it's real and it's happening in the state of Texas and abroad, and giving them that chance to make those connections. So
Yeah, I attended a couple of years. I attended Buckskin Brigades as a speaker, as a guest speaker, and I was there. I think one year I was there when it was like their first day, and some of the wild-eyed looks on some of the students that were there was, I mean, like you said, it's very disciplined, it's very regimented, it's almost military style
mhm.
as far as the structure goes. But it was amazing to see how people, that were uncomfortable in the situation, how they had changed in the course of, like you said, like about a week, how they had changed and become just totally had come out of their shell.
Mhm.
Um, and be able to speak publicly, or at least in front of a small group, and make friends. Like you said, make friendships that last for life. So I'm a big proponent of the Brigades program.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I've been blessed, by the friendships made in that one camp that I was a cadet at, and then I got the opportunity to go back and actually be their camp photographer. So I've actually been to a couple of the camp brigades, or both the Bob Whites, both the Buckskins, and then several of the others, kind of doing their photography and at one time their social media. And so that alone, I was really glad to get to meet all the different people involved, and see all the passionate students. And like you said, kind of, I was one of those kids that kind of came out of his shell when I first got dropped off. I was like, "What am I doing here?" kind of deal. Um, and then by the end of it, I was like, this is what I want to do. And this, I'm excited. I left with a great excitement, for pursuing a career in natural resources after that.
That's awesome.
In the heart of nature, give your deer the nutrition they deserve with Record Rack Deer Feeds. The premium feeds support antler growth and overall herd health. Whether you're a wildlife enthusiast or a dedicated hunter, Record Rack Deer Feeds provide essential nutrients for a thriving herd. Choose Record Rack Deer Feeds for optimal deer nutrition. Visit recordrack.com to learn more.
Today, more Americans are accepting the benefits of hunting and want to learn how to introduce healthy game meat into their diet. The new SAM Field to Fork course includes hunting, shooting, and fieldcraft skills, including hands-on experience that takes students from field dressing their game to the quartering, cutting, and processing of their meat. It's all covered in this 4-day course. And finally, personalized training from a professional wild game chef helps bring attendees full circle and ready to bring the SAM Field to Fork promise to life.
So fast forward, you leave Texas, you go to Colorado to work with elk, completely different species, completely different ecosystem. What about that experience drew you there, and what kind of still stands out in your mind about it today?
Yeah, that to me, that was an extremely fun internship. It was very short, because the elk calving season is pretty short. It was only about 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I was up there, and then I guess to kind of start off, what drew me to it was I wanted to get out of state. I had several mentors in my in my education that were telling me, Joe, if you want to get a lot of diverse opportunities, you want to look for these opportunities out of state, go work out of state for a little bit, just see how you like it, see what's out there, get out of Texas kind of mentality. So that one I applied, and I was fortunate enough to get it. And so got to work with a great team in Colorado, up near like the very northwest corner of the state. So that's far away from Texas as you could get in Colorado without leaving it. And so these elk cows, months prior to them giving birth, they had been netted with a helicopter. They had a VIT implanted into their birth canal, so that when the cow gave birth, we would get a GPS location. We would get like an exact time, temperature, date, every time, or exact location of that birth bed, where we would go in afterwards and we would go collar the calf, because they were interested in studying calf mortality, and survival of the specific elk herd up there. And so we were like the on the ground crew. And so we'd get emails from our boss, and they would be like, all right, here's the location, go find the calf and collar it. So, we would respond to every call as quickly as we could. Sometimes they'd happen at night. So as long as you got to that call within about 16 hours, you were good. Typically the calf would still be in the birth bed, or, a couple of meters around it, so you could still find it. If it was a longer time, then that calf, they were ready to move. And so, yeah, you would go in, and then sometimes you would find the birth bed empty. You'd have to wait, or you'd have to locate the cow. And the cow had her own collar, so it wasn't too hard. But then you were stuck looking for her calf, and if her calf ran, then that was a whole rodeo. So, but it was a very interesting internship, getting to work with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and then some of the researchers that were as part of that team. And so, it was a completely new experience for me. Like you said, it was with elk. Yeah. And one of my first questions for them was, how does mother elk respond when you start walking up on her newborn baby?
That was actually the question I was going to ask you.
Yeah, because it's like white-tailed deer. Okay, mom kind of hangs around or leaves. She's freaking out. Moose will try to stomp you, and you don't want to mess with a mother moose. Yeah. But the elk is kind of in between. So what are they going to do? And the first call that I got, I went with my partner, and we found the calf, and the calf was in the birth bed. And I was like, I was nervous because it was the first time ever getting to do that. And I start working up the calf. We got to take measurements. We're taking the weight, and then we got to put a collar on it. Um, so we're doing all that, trying to move as quickly and efficiently as possible. And I just see that cow elk just come out of the woods staring right at us. And I was like, okay, time to look big or time to look scary, just so that she doesn't get an idea like I'm going to stomp them.
Yeah.
And then she didn't move on us, but then the whole elk herd came back and came around us.
Wow.
So we were surrounded by a whole herd of elk, and I was like, this could go south really quick if they decide, to do something about us.
Yeah.
But they didn't. And we were able to work up the calf and let him go, and then everything was fine. But just kind of one of those moments you're like, man, what's going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure, especially not being familiar with that whole process. And the mother elk they'll take the calf back pretty readily once you guys do all your work and collar them and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Their abandonment typically, rarely happened. Sometimes we would get there, and sometimes you could kind of tell something that was wrong, like from the birth.
Yeah.
And so there was always those cases. And then typically we wouldn't get another call about it until if that calf collar fell off or if something ate it. And so we were responded to a lot of black bear mortalities in that area, particularly. So elk calves are eaten by black bears, surprising.
Yeah.
But so there was a lot of times like that. And then we'd go in and we'd have to do kind of like a necropsy on the whatever was left. And, depending on the age of the calf, usually not much was left. Bears are pretty efficient eaters. And there was a lot of signs. It's like you could tell it was a bear because 5 or a foot away from the carcass is a bear scat, or, this entire area has been flattened by a very large bear, and there's hair and there's tree claw marks and everything you can imagine. But another story though about the bear, sometimes or towards the end of the internship, the cow collars, they were deactivated on certain individuals because they had been on them for several years. So the batteries were going to run out. So the collars have a little explosive device, not like lethal, but it just pops the collar off and then it falls off. And so we were tasked with going and recovering those collars because a lot of them had all the data stored in them on their hard drives. So some of the cases that we'd go and we'd have to go find these collars that were dropped off. You're working with your partner, and sometimes we'd be walking for miles and looking for these collars. But one of the stories that I'm talking about is me and my partner were walking down this draw of cottonwoods, and I saw a big tan blob move through the brush, and I was like, "Is the same color as an elk?" And there's elk in these draws, so it's like, okay, there's probably just a cow elk that we spooked. And about 2 minutes later, 2 little black bear cubs just slam against this cottonwood tree that's in front of us. And we're about 100 yards away from it. But just 2 little cubs just boom, hit the tree trunk and then scurry up. And then around the corner comes a tan, almost blonde black bear mom, sow. And she was looking right at us.
Yeah.
And so we were like, we don't need this collar today. We're going to back out of here and we're going to come back later.
Yeah, you learn very quickly not to get between a sow and her cubs.
Yeah,
I think probably the most, well, I wasn't scared but nervous and going, now what do I do? Was one time when I was bow hunting bear in Canada, and I had a sow run 2 cubs up in a tree because a big male came out and she ran them up my tree, and I'm like, I got a cub below me and a cub above me and a sow at the base of the tree. I'm like, now what do I do? No handgun. You can't take handguns into Canada, so all I had has an arrow and a knife, and that luckily it ended up okay. But yeah, man, you see those sows out with those cubs, you best back off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And glad she decided to put them in the tree before doing something about it, and then just kind of stand off with us.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, that's good enough for me. That's for sure.
Yeah, that was cool. Let's get out of here. So let's talk a little bit. Photography obviously plays a huge part in your life, and wildlife photography in specific. When did your love for photography evolve from documenting wildlife into something that became a passion, or was it just always a passion and wildlife was a part of it?
Hmm. I would say even starting out, when I was so small enough that I couldn't even see out of like a pop-up blind, I'd sit in the chair with my dad and he'd be taking pictures. And, I did a lot of, hunting and photography with my dad. And so it all started, as this family connection, and getting to spend time with him and in the outdoors. And so before I could even, had my own camera or even could even see out of the blind,
Mm.
I was kind of exposed to it. And then my brother did photography as well, or still does, but he got his own camera. And then when he upgraded his camera is when I kind of took on his old model. And so then, all three of us going out in the outdoors, we were all just, taking pictures of whatever we could find. And we all have a different eye, which is really interesting because, my dad would be photographing a, bird, or my brother would be photographing the landscape, and then I'd be photographing a little beetle that nobody saw. And
Yeah.
so we all had our own perspectives and kind of our own eye for what we wanted to take pictures of. And that's getting to share those later with each other, and then with our friends and family is how it became a passion for me. And then it's kind of just built into this, working with freelance, or as a freelance writer and photographer for outdoor magazines. And that's really where I've wanted to take it ever since. I grew up reading tons and tons of old Texas Parks and Wildlife magazines, old Texas Wildlife magazines, and seeing my dad had photos published in some of those, and then seeing the articles that went around with them. And then, eventually I was like, I want to do this. And so that's when I started reaching out to editors and making some of those connections in the editorial world to one, kind of promote publish my photography in their outlets, but then kind of realizing, it's easier to get published if you can also write the story and provide that all in a big photo package or a big, deal to the editor. And so that's when I've really started to, wanted to continue or build my writing and photography portfolio and kind of take it to the next level. And so that's what I've been continuing to do. And writing for the freelance article here and there, but also continuing the photography. So yeah, it's just been kind of started from a passion, and then it's kind of taken on this new role that I hope continues.
I know you probably have a lot of camera equipment. Do you have a favorite that you like to use on a regular basis?
Yeah, so my whole life I've been photographing with Canon.
Okay.
And then so my current model, it's a Canon 5D Mark IV. Really like I like that model, especially just because the full frame sensor in the body of the camera, which if the photo's sharp, if you get a good photo and it's you can tell really quickly. If the eye is sharp and you've got a good photo, you can blow it up into a canvas or a banner or any kind of size, and so it'll come out in good print media as well. I've always liked those. I like the Canons. I've gotten to play with some of the other, like the mirrorless cameras, and really am in love with them. So just can't afford them at the moment. So I think that will be my next big purchase. Will be a mirrorless Canon, probably something from the Canon R series.
Gunworks just launched a new rifle system. It's called Index. It's sized for adventure and engineered for extremes. With barrel lengths as short as 16 inches and a folding stock that collapses to an ultra-short profile, the Gunworks Index fits nicely in a UTV, a float plane, or across the seat of your truck without sacrificing accuracy. The Index features a built-in ARCA and pick rail for use on tripod or bipod, and a night vision rail to ensure you're ready for any scenario. The Gunworks Index delivers magnum capability in the most compact chassis rifle system on the market. Visit gunworks.com to learn more.
This episode of Hunting Matters is brought to you by Republic Boot Company. At Republic Boot Company, we don't just make boots, we craft heirlooms. From premium custom and stock boots to handcrafted leather bags, belts, and accessories. Everything we create reflects Texas heritage and timeless quality. Our Houston craftsmen use the finest leathers and time-honored techniques to deliver style built to last. Whether you're stepping into a new pair of boots or carrying a signature leather bag, experience craftsmanship the Republic way. Visit Republic Boot Company and discover quality made for everyday life. Learn more at republicbootcompany.com. Having shot so many photographs of your life, what, in your opinion, separates a photo, a good photo, from one that actually tells a story?
Mhm.
Is there, because we all fancy ourselves photographers now that we all have iPhones with cameras per se. And I've done a little bit of amateur photography over the years and wildlife scenarios and that sort of thing. But in your mind, what is it? What is it that really draws your eye to a subject, or when you get back and you look at all your photos, and go, those are good photos, but this one tells a story? Is there a distinctive feature, or is it just the subject, the lighting, all of the above? If you had,
Yeah,
and I ask you that sorry for interrupting you. I ask you that from the perception of, let's say there is no write-up. Let's just say there's a table with like 10 photos on it, and your eye is drawn to one, and you're like, that photo really tells a story. Talk to
hmm
me a little bit about that.
hmm I think there's a lot of elements to that, and it's like, as a photographer, for me, it's like hunting too. It's, we go into the field, and the mindset, the ideology that I have is, I'm going to learn, like, regardless of what I see today. Like, I may come away with, only a few shots of, a cactus flower, and I didn't get to see the big deer. I didn't get to see, what I wanted to photograph. But, having sort of this ideology that's like, I'm learning, I'm always building, and I'm always experiencing something new in the outdoors. That to me is what makes, photography really worth it, and really a very a passion of mine. Getting to spend time in God's creation and getting to, get to observe things that I know a lot of people never have seen in their lives. I don't want to ever take that for granted, because, the photos captured in one moment, you never know how those are going to be used, or how they're going to impact or influence, yourself or somebody else. But what makes a really great photo to me, I mean, I can talk about composition, and I can talk about, lighting and subject matter, and how does this photo evoke emotion in myself or in somebody else. But it's like a combination of all of that. But like, we as photographers, we're expected to exercise creativity, we're people of craft. So there's all sorts of challenges, and um, I want to say just components to getting the perfect photograph that I think a lot of people never have considered. So, um, especially like in the case of something like a rare species, like, you don't really know how many hours and hours it took to get that perfect shot. And so, um, and all the training or the learning that went along with it, all the the sweat and the tears sitting in a blind and 100-degree heat and waiting for that subject to come out. I mean, there's all kinds of different avenues or components to take with that. But for me, it's the experience that I got along with the photograph. That to me is what really matters. But and does it tell a story? I think lots of photos can tell stories, and I think some of the best photos that I've seen or that I've taken. I like to incorporate human subject, or something that kind of bridges the gap between nature and man.
Mm.
And so, getting to tell kind of like these natural resources stories, they to me are they're going to be really impactful, because we're at a time now where I think we need to be telling more stories like that, and showing the connections that we have to nature and God's beautiful creation, and just being better storytellers of conservation, and where some of these species are at, and where some of these landscapes and habitats, what conditions they're in, and just putting that in front of people's eyes. Is that's gonna it's gonna be a challenge, but I think that's what's gonna move the needle on a lot of things in the future.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more. I know you've taken thousands and thousands of photographs. Is there one photograph or a series of photographs or a certain location that you've been that really stands out at you? I mean, like I said, I've done some amateur stuff, so I've got a few that I really turned out, and surprisingly, I went, "Wow, that's really cool. I'm going to frame that, put that on the wall." Do you have one or two of those that really stand out?
Yes, for sure. I think for me, one of the coolest like subjects that I've ever gotten to photograph was lesser prairie chickens in the Texas Panhandle.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because I did it with my dad. So we're very fortunate. We actually got a photo package deal from a raffle with the Texas chapter of the Wildlife Society a few years back. And so we got to go with some researchers with Texas Tech University. We got to locations of the leks, or those traditional breeding grounds where the prairie chickens will show up, come April. And so it was the first time that either one of us had ever seen a prairie chicken in the wild. So that was just an experience that we got to share together. And then, I didn't know anything about lesser prairie chickens until getting that opportunity. And so I think one of the biggest things that photography or wildlife photography has done for me is, it's created this opportunity for me to want to research more or learn more about the photography subjects, which I think goes hand in hand with, if you're going to hunt something or if you're going to photograph something, learning more about its behavior, its biology, its habitat, what's its current status, or, as much information as you can glean about it. Because when I was taking pictures of prairie chickens, it was amazing getting to hear the sounds that they make, the cackles, the booms. You're sitting in a blind in the 6 a.m, it's pitch black, and then you just hear them just fly in and descend on the lek, and you can't see anything out there. It's just this black, blue landscape, flat landscape, but you start to hear them. And then those chickens, they fight. I never knew that they did so much fighting, but I mean, they beat each other pretty good. They're just like little feathered rockets, just hitting each other all the time.
Wow.
So, and it's extremely hard. I've never waited so long or had so many opportunities, like trying to get the perfect shot. And then we came away with it, and I was like, I think I got one or two that I'm like really, really happy with. So it's a challenge, I think. And that's what makes it really a lot of fun, is getting that, challenging yourself, and then kind of building and learning all the time. So you're always learning in this field. So
Well, thank goodness that we don't have to use standard film anymore.
yeah,
Take as many pictures you want. Do you ever shoot film at all? Does anybody ever shoot film?
I know one or two people who still just kind of shoot landscape with the film. I don't know many people that do it with wildlife anymore, because it's the evolution of film to digital to now mirrorless. And like the mirrorless is just crazy too, because I mean, you don't even have to try sometimes. You just like, and it takes like 60 images. And so you have every single frame is just like tack sharp, and it's amazing. So my camera can't do that right now.
Yeah, mine doesn't either. I've got an old one too. So that's very cool. The hunt of a lifetime doesn't end in the field. It ends when your trophy arrives safely at home. That's where Genus Logistics comes in. With more than 20 years of experience in trophy importation, customs brokerage, and international freight forwarding, Genus handles every step of the process so you don't have to. From Africa to Alaska and everywhere in between, trust the expert who keep hunters hunting. Learn more at genuslogistics.com. The Houston Safari Club Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that supports the future of hunting and conservation. Wildlife and habitat conservation, youth education and outdoor experiences, scholarships, and anti-poaching efforts are just a few of the programs supported by this organization. Monthly events, an annual convention, award-winning publications, networking opportunities, and valuable resources for hunting knowledge are just a few of the benefits of being a member of Houston Safari Club Foundation. If you're searching for a group of people dedicated to protecting the future of hunting, look no further. Join Houston Safari Club Foundation today at wehuntwegive.org or call 713-623-8844. So now you're an outreach specialist with Playa Lakes Joint Venture, Tomorrow's Water Initiative. I have no clue about these organizations, about these efforts. So tell our audience all about them.
Sure. So the Playa Lakes Joint Venture, which is who I work for as the Tomorrow's Water Outreach Specialist, or I work for basically with communities, agricultural producers, ranchers, livestock producers, pretty much everybody in this region, and with the goal of restoring playa wetlands to their full functionality for groundwater recharge. So The joint venture itself, it kind of started off as a bird focus organization. And so it started off as mainly waterfowl focus and conservation of habitat for waterfowl and promoting that throughout the Playa Lakes region. So Playa Lakes they're shallow temporary wetlands. So they are rainfall fed. So when we get a good rainfall or storm event, they fill up with water. And they're very important for habitat for the waterfowl, for shorebirds and cranes that are migrating through the Central Flyway, and they're also good habitat for mammals, amphibians, invertebrates. Lots of different flora are found around them that depend on them because they hold water. And so this region, it's these Playa Lakes. They're found from Texas and eastern New Mexico all the way up to Nebraska. So our region covers that whole area, and then my territory is the Texas Panhandle, and so we have over 23,000 of these Playa Lakes and wetlands in Texas alone. So over 80% of them are not functioning properly in terms of their hydrology and their recharge abilities for the aquifer. So that is what we're in the business of, is we're restoring the playa basins by going in and addressing some of the modifications that have been made since like the 40s, 50s, and 60s, when producers were told, if you want to hold water in this playa for longer and use it for irrigation, mainly row crop irrigation, to dig a pit in it, and that will hold the water longer. But what that does is that you're removing valuable clay from the playa basin, and then that water is no longer recharging into the aquifer. It's just sitting in a pit, and then it's evaporating off from the heat. So that's one of the big things that we do is we go fill pits. We reverse any other modifications like trenches or drainage features. Typically, there's a lot of sediment that kind of fills into a playa. So sediment is just any material that kind of from wind or from water erosion kind of fills into the playa and kind of clogs the clay. And so that is something that we want to remove from the clay basin so that that water has a chance to travel towards the aquifer through the clay. And typically we want to have a vegetation buffer around the playa basin. So typically if there is no vegetation around it, we'll go and we'll plant native grass mixes around the playa basin, just so that when that water freely enters the playa, sediment has a chance to catch on that grass and that vegetation, and it's not going into your water table. So that's that's a lot of information I just threw at you.
No, but it was a very clear, explanation of it. And I think we take it for granted, but especially those who aren't out in the field and seeing these playas, don't even know they exist. To understand what a fragile ecosystem is, and how important it is as part of a larger ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. And that is something that's a lot of people that I work with don't even know what a playa is, or we have 23,000 of them, but you can drive by almost all of them and never know they're there. Because typically the playas are dry, especially because they're rainfall fed. But back in the day, they were filled with more water from irrigation runoff than anything, because we had row crop irrigation. So that water, whatever wasn't taken up by, the crop or the vegetation, it's just running off, and it would go to the lowest point in that watershed, which is a playa. And so that filled a lot of playas, and more people were kind of used to it. But, that's all pumping groundwater. And the biggest concern that we're having is the declining aquifer levels in this region. So we sit on top of the Ogallala Aquifer, or the High Plains Aquifer. It's the largest aquifer in the nation in terms of size and productivity. And it's the number of communities that sit on top of it. They're completely dependent on groundwater pumping for their drinking water, for their municipal water.
Yeah.
And then for all these communities, especially the rural communities, are all dependent on agriculture for their economies. And so irrigation pumping that's the biggest water user in the region. And so our Tomorrow's Water program is we work with the communities to help address future water supplies by restoring the playas and trying to educate them and promote awareness of the importance of having these playas in the region, because without them, they really are the only mechanism of recharge we have on the Cap Rock and in this area. So we don't have any of the big river basins that are full, like a Nebraska or other regions. So we really only have the playas.
Yeah. Yeah. I when I first left Louisiana, I lived in San Antonio for many years, and I learned quickly what an aquifer was. Never heard of it before, and how critical it is. And you hit summer, it's like you can't water your yard anymore because the aquifer levels are too low. So I've become quite familiar with that aspect of it. As we wrap up, I've got like 30 more questions that we're never going to get to today, so I'm going to have you back on. But as we wrap up today, let me ask you this question. If you packed up your camera equipment and we said we're going to cover all your travel expenses and told you that tomorrow morning you could photograph anywhere in the world, any species, what would you do? Where would you go? What would you photograph?
Oh man, well, there's a couple places. I think one of the biggest places that's been on my list of places to photograph has been Australia. Australia and Tasmania and New Zealand, like all of that just really hits home with me, because all the wildlife is so unique there. All the landscapes are so incredible. So I think I could spend easily, long time in that part of the world. So I've traveled to South Africa twice, and so I've done some photography there. I'd love to go back to Africa, though. It's one of my favorite places, and just the wildlife in there is amazing. And my wife and I, we really want to go to Costa Rica. So we're recently married, and that's kind of our honeymoon destination that we're planning for right now. So that's hopefully going to be the next big trip.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, my wife and I, we haven't had a real vacation in years, and believe it or not, I've never actually gone through Yellowstone. I've been in and around Yellowstone, so we're actually taking a week, and my producer and I were talking about it before the show, is we're going to go up there. I'm going to grab a couple of cameras, and we're just going to drive around for like 4 or 5 days and just be tourists.
Yeah.
So
if you can, stay in multiple places, because it's so big.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love the South End a lot, and especially close to the Tetons. That area is really cool.
Well, as we do, pay our business with pleasure. I'm actually attending some meetings in Cody, so we're going to go in the east entrance and try to hit at least half of the figure 8 while we're there. So I'm looking forward to that. But and no, I will not be one of those guys on the clips that you see running up behind a buffalo trying to poke it in the butt. So these people.
That's too soon. That's been on my Facebook all week.
It's just amazing. These people, what they do. Joe Richards, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sorry, but we've run out of time, but it's been fun talking to you. I'm definitely going to have to have you back on and talk about some of these other topics. But thanks so much for your time, and we really learned a lot today. And congratulations on what you've accomplished at such a young age in such so many diverse fields in the outdoors. That's incredible.
Thank you, sir. And yeah, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to come on and get to visit. So I appreciate the talk, and yeah, I'd love to do it again. So anytime.
Awesome. Folks, we will see you here next week on Hunting Matters, brought to you by the Houston Safari Club. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the episodes. We'd love to have you follow along on us and hear interesting guests like Joe Richards. So thanks once again, and we will see you next week on Hunting Matters. Hunting Matters is a Houston Safari Club Foundation production. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For questions or more information, email us at info@wehuntwegive.org.